only then am I going to be able to charge a price. I mean, when it comes to an e-commerce jewelry brand, your digital marketing game, of course, has to be on point. Being very clear about what you're trying to sell, what's the USP, how does this brand look, what's the feeling you evoke when a person looks at this logo, and make sure you are the catalyst of all of these smart people doing their thing, creating magic, coming together. That's what running a business is about. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Group podcast. Today we are going to be discussing about e-commerce jewelry brands. How do you grow them? What kind of content do you create? And how do you become successful at scaling a brand like that?
So e-commerce is an interesting topic in and of itself. A lot of people, whenever they decide they want to start a brand, they'll go to YouTube, they'll search how to start an e-com brand. There are 1,000 videos about drop shipping, there are 1,000 videos about creating your own products. So this looks like a very competitive space, and once you buy those products, once you make those products, there's some capital invested and you're already in. So how do you really build an e-commerce brand? How do you really set up?
Nowadays we are in a market which is so crowded. Like today, anything you pick up, be it lifestyle, fashion, jewelry, any product, okay, it's so widely already sold by the big wigs like an Amazon, a Myntra, Ajio, or Tata Click. These brands are already backed with a huge amount of money, with huge marketing teams, people who are amazing at their jobs and have funding of millions of dollars. So what happens is that today, if I'm creating an e-commerce brand, I want to make sure that why is a person not going to go and buy a similar product straight from Amazon? How I'm going to make sure of that is I want to create a brand with a story. Okay, any brand that has a story driven by it. Like today, in the middle there was this brand which used to sell plates which are painted by blind people. Okay, now today you will buy a plate like that compared to a plate on Amazon. And why you will do that is because it has a story to it, it has a feeling to it. Today when somebody asks you about that plate, you have something to talk about. Okay, so any e-commerce brand which I am creating today has to have a really, really smart and specific USP. It has to have a story to it. It has to have a feeling to it. Okay. Only then am I going to be able to charge a price which a person is okay to pay compared to the cheaper alternatives available on these huge online marketplaces. So how to create that USP, how to make sure your branding tells that story, and how do you make sure that a person identifies with your brand in a way where he is attached to it emotionally. I think that's the key of building an e-commerce brand today. The USP, why you are selling it, what's the story behind it, what's the story behind the product, the service, and why does it exist in this world, and how well you can convey it. That is, I think, the key to making sure today as an e-commerce startup you can do better and you can function and scale compared when you have competitors like an Amazon or Ajio.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned price, because I was going to talk about an example wherein let's consider hoodies. There's a Zudio's hoodie and there's a let's say Supreme hoodie. And the Zudio hoodie you buy and you wear it and you think, okay, that's a good hoodie. I got it for cheap, that's a good hoodie, that's fine. But when you buy a Supreme hoodie, what you're trying to essentially convey to the world is you're into skating culture, you're into the like NBA culture, all of those gaming culture, and like that particular piece of clothing becomes a cultural talking point with your friends. So I think a lot of brands that are able to do that are able to charge that high markup price. Whereas if you like put the same price tag on a Zudio or any other brand, Ajio, it's never going to like sell for that well. So speaking of like e-commerce brands, there's one segment in e-commerce that's really like popular, and it's jewelry and accessories. So what do you think really works for scaling up a jewelry brand?
I mean, when it comes to an e-commerce jewelry brand, your digital marketing game, of course, has to be on point. And there are so many aspects to it. Of course, one part is your complete website flow, UI, UX, how fast you can go from opening the website to checking out. That's your entire website part of it. Then comes your social media. How are you telling your story? What kind of graphics are you using? What kind of reels are you shooting? How does one feel when they come to your page? Do they identify with your USP? Is it conveyed in 3 seconds? Okay. Then comes the entire influencer marketing. But today, people don't buy brands unless they identify a type of people with it. Okay. And how do you make sure that you collaborate with the right influencers in a way that it is not very heavy on your pocket? At the same time, you don't have to give away a lot of your product. At the same time, you make sure you are identifying your brand with the right influencers who match your USP. So again, social media, your entire website, its backend, influencer marketing, and of course, the major thing is the performance marketing. What kind of ads, what platforms, what's your CTR, what kind of ROI are you getting? Are you still making money at the end of the day? What's your return rate? All of these things matter so much. And behind all this, of course, before starting your brand, being very clear about what you're trying to sell, what's the USP, how does this brand look, what's the feeling you evoke when a person looks at this logo, what's the feeling you evoke when these colors come out, when this product ka packaging opens up. All of these things, it makes a big difference. So you need to make sure, number one, you have your branding game right. And I always tell startups and people who are starting new brands, they take branding so lightly, and eventually 3 months down, when they have spent lakhs of rupees and the brand doesn't look the way they wanted to, way they had envisioned it, or way that they had seen a competitor and like, I want to make this, is because they don't spend time on their branding, their tone of voice, their colors. What's your master graphic? How does a video always going to start? What's the kind of music you're going to use? To set these things right in the beginning itself, so that your brand aligns with the particular vision that you have, is so important. And I would always say, spend on this, because you need people who are professionals to create that brand language, those brand guidelines, which form a base for the entire brand you're going to create on different platforms, on different channels, in person, offline, online, everywhere.
Right. So I've been developing websites for a while, but I remember when I developed my first website with you, the thing that you told me to focus on was what's the first thing that's going to pop up in front of the customers. How are you going to exactly convey what exactly this site is about? How do you purchase it? Where do you get it? Everything, all of the information you have to convey to them like that in a snap. So that really like resonated with me. And other than that, I also clicked something about the performance marketing aspect. Whereas I've seen a lot of people start their e-commerce brands, and the issues that they face is, Meta and Google both are very difficult to navigate. There will be some sort of a problem that you won't even be able to start your account. You won't even be able to get off the starting point. So I think that what we do as professionals, we set it up in a way that all of these challenges are just skipped for whoever is working with us. I think that is one of the most important things, that you get these things done professionally, especially the website and the performance marketing aspect of it.
Certainly, like I don't think you are always good at one thing and you're not good at the rest, or you're a pro at one skill and you're not a pro at the rest. Find the right person to do it. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you in that aspect of the business and have them do their best. And make sure you are the catalyst of all of these smart people doing their thing, creating magic, coming together. That's what running a business is about. Like today, I could be great at building a website, but I don't know how to shoot an amazing catchy reel which is going to get me visitors on my website. So I'm going to find a photographer, I'm going to find a video editor who can make that happen. And again, that's why agencies like us exist, right? Today, when you want to stand out in the market, your branding, your digital marketing, the way your brand looks online has to be on point. People have the attention span of a child. They're not going to spend more than 3 seconds on a reel, not more than 2 seconds on your website. If they are not in sync with what you are selling, if it doesn't appeal to them, or if you've not said your story right, you're going to lose them. And with that goes the cost that you spent to get them on. And again, as I say, especially when you're starting an e-commerce brand, today when you are, just think about it this way. Today, when you open a shop, okay, you think about the interiors, the feeling when a person comes in. How does it smell? How does it feel? Is it cold? Is it warm? Who's greeting them first? Is there a smiling person over there? How are your salespeople talking about? All of these aspects when you run an offline business, okay? Now, turn the same thing online, okay? Here, people are coming on your online store, which is again a representation of your actual store, which would have been offline. So how does it look? How does a person feel? All of the same amount of energy has to go into building this online experience to equate it to your offline experience. That's what the biggest problem is. People don't take the same amount of effort that they would have in their offline experience, in terms of resources, in terms of money, in terms of time. They're just like, let's make the website, let's run an ad, let's put 7 posts on Instagram, let's shoot 3 reels, let's get 5 influencers, and let's start. But what's the thought? What's the brand? How does a person feel when they come in contact with your content? All of these things, to make sure that this is on point, even though it's not physically there, to imagine it yourself by zooming out and looking at it as a customer, as a client, and making sure it's as good as what an offline store of yours would have been if you built it. That's the key to making sure your e-commerce brand is a success.
That makes sense. How you build this initial bit of interest with the potential customer, how do you ensure that it results into a long-term relationship with that particular person?
Sell good products. Another problem with most e-commerce brands is they spend a lot of time in their digital marketing, ace that game, but the product, in the end, what you are selling, they forget that effort and experimentation and R&D has to go behind that product as well, right? So if you are getting people to your website, you're getting them to buy something, but you're buying something which is not the story that you are selling, you're not going to have a return sale. And today, e-commerce or any businesses are made on return customers. Getting the first customer in, getting them the first time in is the difficult part, but the more difficult part and the part that will decide whether you will become a big brand or no is the fact that they come in again. And this most of the time does not happen because the service and the product is not up to the mark of what is being sold. So again, selling a good product, selling a good service, making sure they come back, that's the key.
So I had one of my friends starting a handmade jewelry store, and one of the mistakes that I think that she did was she had a lot of SKUs. So she had around 15 to 20 SKUs, but she had a budget that was really low. So, and she approached me for running ads for her business. And what I told her was, with this set of budget, you should ideally go with 5 to 7 SKUs. So I think where a lot of beginners go wrong is they buy like a lot of products, or they create a lot of SKUs, and then they face these issues that not all of those products are going to get visibility in that particular budget. So how do you really plan out your inventory, and how do you really decide what SKUs to go for?
Research. today all the possible resources about online marketing, e-commerce, everything is available online, and you have the people who you can pay and you can get this research done. If I'm starting a brand, okay, in this space, in this location, in this market with this target audience, how much does it cost to get a customer on my site? How much does it cost to convert a sale? Factor that in, and then you can back calculate, forward calculate to understand how much money you're going to need monthly to do your performance marketing. Then you other aspects of your budget, finance it out. Make sure that you have your sheet ready, knowing, okay, I need to spend 3 lakh rupees a month to make sure my brand grows for the next 6 months. Do I have that money? If I don't have that money, I need to make sure that I don't start itself, because, or I winnow down, I reduce the amount of SKUs, making sure that you are on track with your finances and you have money to sustain will only happen if you plan. But if you go in spending a bunch on your inventory, spending a bunch on something which could have been delayed for later, and you don't have that money left for the most important aspects, again everything goes down to this thing. So research, plan, financing, making sure your financial decisions are on point in order to make sure you can sustain your business to a point where it grows and it can sustain itself is key.
So this also ties back to Priestley's 7, 11 and 4 rule, wherein he says that a potential customer has to spend 7 hours of time consuming content on your website, social media, all of that. They have to have at least 11 interactions with you, and they have to see you in 4 different places. That's when they start to trust you, that's when they become a customer. So just to tie it all up, what do you think really, if a person is starting a jewelry brand today and they're watching this video, what advice would you give them? Let's say a potential client has walked in for a jewelry e-commerce brand. What advice would you give them? What's a good starting point?
I would say, number one, research. See what's working, see who's successful. If you have access to founders, talk to them. People love to give advice. Take benefit of that. Research as much as you can in your space. Second, invest in branding. Invest in having professionals find a way to beautifully tell your story. And third, budget. Most e-commerce brands fail because they cannot even run for a year on the money that they have, and then they reach a point where they're just doing good and they have no money to function or no money to experiment. Make sure you have the money to run a brand for a year without making a single penny. Of course you will make money, but you should have that in the back of your this thing, because if you're going in for war and if you're not armored properly, it's no point. And e-commerce today is war. So these main 3 things, and of course all the other basics that we talked about, and I hope we've added some value to the whole e-commerce marketing, branding and digital space, and anybody who's watching this has had the knowledge that has come from our experience of working with multiple brands and growing them. Thank you so much.